Continuing our Connect to Congress initiative with U.S. Congressman LaHood of Illinois' 18th District. Congressman, we have to touch base on the immigration issue. President Donald Trump met with House Republicans this week. Were you a part of that meeting? And if so, what came from it?
Well, I said from the very beginning that separating families at the border wasn't a long-term solution to this and that it needed to change. Unfortunately, Congress hadn't been able to do that, but I give the president credit today. He ended that policy through an executive order. He listened to Congress, he listened to folks in his administration and made the right decision to end that policy. And so that's a good thing. But we have to go back to, we have to stop people illegally coming across our border and to stop those, those things that incentivize people to come across the border. And so it becomes more important to pass a strong immigration bill. We'll have an opportunity to do that in the House this week. Again, securing the border, more money to put up fencing and barriers, and where we can, a wall. We have to stop people from flooding across our southern border. I give the president a lot of credit for taking up this initiative. It's something that he ran on. Border crossings are generally down since the president came in, but we now have an obligation to put enforcement into the law to change things from what we're doing now, put more resources along the border, and I'm hopeful that this week we'll have an opportunity to do that and put a bill on the president's desk to stop this, and then we can work on, again, legal immigration, where we change it to a more merit-based system to make us competitive.
And in general, what are your thoughts on the administration's immigration policy of keeping children away from their parents?
Well, regardless of the fault, the president took action today through executive action and working with the Homeland Security Department. Now it's our obligation to do something. Again, we'll have an opportunity to vote tomorrow on the Goodlatte-McCall bill, which I think puts us in a very good position with E-Verify, again, going to a merit-based system, securing the border. That will do a lot to change our illegal immigration system. And hopefully, once we pass it here, it can go over to the Senate and pass there. So I'm optimistic about that moving forward.
I'd also like to get your take on the president's plan to create a so-called Space Force as an addition to the armed services.
Well, obviously, space and NASA is an important part of our government. We have to make sure that we are competitive, particularly around the world. And, you know, one good thing I think we've done in this country is we've worked with the private sector. Now we have a lot of different private entities that are involved in space. It's not just the federal government. I think that's good for taxpayers. But we still lead the world in terms of space exploration. We have some of the brightest, smartest people at NASA and also in our Defense Department that work on there. But obviously, space and NASA is important to our national security, to staying ahead of the game in terms of America's superiority when it comes to space exploration. And so I give the president credit for what he's trying to do and the initiative that's been put out there.
This week, the House voted on multiple bills to address the opioid crisis, including a bill you co-sponsored. If this bill passes, what would it do?
So we were proud to sponsor a bill called the Opioid Action Plan bill. And essentially what we've said is there's lots of different federal agencies out there that have jurisdiction over opioids. And what we've said is we need to consolidate that. And so what we've said is either through Medicare and Medicaid and the Department of Health and Services, come up with a plan that consolidates these federal agencies moving forward. More people die today by opioid overdoses or heroin overdoses than do car accidents. This is an epidemic. I've had 4 roundtables in my district over the last year on this issue. We have to focus on 4 areas. One is more Narcan with our first responders and police officers. Secondly, holding doctors accountable that overprescribe opioids and working with our regulatory agencies on that. Thirdly, more money for rehabilitation and for treatment centers. That has to be a part of working with our court system to make sure that we are not warehousing nonviolent offenders. And then lastly is, again, working with law enforcement. 80% of the heroin that comes across our border comes across the Mexican border. We need more money so that we can stop that flow of heroin coming in. That will help, and that's what our bill that we introduced this week. It passed unanimously last night. Hopefully the Senate will do the same. We'll get it passed into law. This
week marks the 6-month anniversary of the tax reform bill. What are the effects that you've seen so far?
I have concerns about the approach we're taking with tariffs. For our agriculture is the #1 industry in my district, and the word that our farmers hate to hear is retaliation. But that's what's going to happen with the proposed tariffs that are going to go into effect. We've already seen it. The country that imports the most to China is the United States in terms of soybeans. So we have to be concerned about that. Nobody wins in a trade war. I give the president credit for trying to go after the Chinese. They've continually ripped us off with intellectual property, with forced technology transfers, particularly in our military and our cyber areas. We have to hold them accountable. But getting into a trade war where there's retaliation on all of our ag exports is detrimental to our ag economy. And remember, ag prices are very marginal right now, and so we can't afford to have those prices dip, which will happen in a trade war. So what I've said to the president, try to get the best deal possible, hold the Chinese accountable, but let's partner with our allies around the world, the European Union, the Canadians, the Mexicans, the Australians, to go after China, not go at it alone. I think there's some damage that will be done to our manufacturing and our farmers by doing that, and that's what I've tried to tell the president and his team moving forward.
Congressman Darren LaHood, as always, we appreciate your time.